Blessings, good evening. We have a few questions have come in today, so try to answer them for you. The first one is, Luang Po, how do you find courage in the practice? I'm not sure in Pali, the words of the Buddha, there's an exact translation from courage into the Pali, but probably combines one or two qualities, I think. Probably the closest one would be virya, energy. Sometimes they call that heroic energy, or the energy of a strong person. Somebody who's trying hard and willing to put forth effort, energy in the face of difficulty. But I wouldn't say that means courage alone. We also depend on other qualities such as patience and mindfulness and wisdom. But I'd say the beginning of courage maybe is the quality of saddha, faith. Many people turn to Buddhist practice because they have noticed they have stress, suffering in their lives, and they're looking for a way out. And when they get some inspiration and faith in the Buddha and his teachings, then maybe the good energy that starts to arise from that gives them some courage to face their problems, try to understand their problems, their stress, and do something about it through the practice. So faith leads on to effort, virya. If you've got no faith, no confidence in the Buddhist teachings, then it's hard to arouse much energy to do the practice. So look at meditation. Probably the hardest part of meditation is being willing to start meditating, to do it. Once you're meditating, well, you need courage as well, and make the effort, continue the effort as you're meditating. But just getting started is probably the hardest part. And one of the biggest obstacles people have is they have a fear or a worry, a concern that it will be difficult. They say, oh, meditation, my legs will hurt, my back will hurt, it's going to be tiring, my mind is all over the place, I'm going to have to face my confused, proliferating mind. So they shrink back, which is one of the characteristics of fear. You shrink back from doing something such as meditation because you've already imagined all the problems before you've even started, so you don't even want to start. But the courage comes maybe from hearing the Buddha's words, the teachings, or maybe from a living teacher who's wise and peaceful, and you want to follow their example, and what they say makes sense, and their example seems a good example. And also meeting and spending time with Kalyana Mitta, other fellow practitioners who maybe have sila and have wisdom. All of these help you to put forth effort in your practice, to begin practicing, to put forth effort. And so they can bring up a certain level of courage, bravery in your practice. At least being willing to try and overcome some of your doubts and fears. But then as you keep practicing, maybe your own experience gives rise to some knowledge and understanding, wisdom. You see the benefits of what you're doing, and then you get more courage, more strength of mind, more willingness to face things that seem difficult. a bit like say a weightlifter starts with lifting small weights, but as they do it more, they get stronger muscles, get more used to it, they can lift more. As you practice, you can face more of these difficulties that you perceive as problems and obstacles in your practice. You can look at them and maybe go through them. Say pain in your legs when you meditate, you can often get to the point where you realize it's very impermanent and you can see it, it's not really you, it's just a feeling, and you can be more mindful of it. So as mindfulness improves, you get strength of mind, and that is another factor in your courage. Your effort in the beginning is to bring up mindfulness, but as mindfulness is more sustained, that also sustains more effort, and more wisdom arises, more understanding, more knowledge. And that also feeds back into developing more mindfulness, and then you can see better the true nature of things. So you even see fear itself, say the opposite of courage or bravery, is an impermanent sankhara. It's a mental state that arises, passes away. Often we associate courage with just mere physical strength, and having a lot of physical strength can give you courage. It can certainly help if you're healthy, strong, when you have to practice the Dhamma, whether it's doing good, helping people, or keeping precepts, or meditating, whatever aspect, it can certainly help. But it's not a guarantee of courage. People who are very strong can still shy away, back away from even the simplest thing, dealing with their own states of mind. They don't want to face negative states of mind, confusion. They don't want to put up with little bits of pain, say, when they meditate and so on. It's not a guarantee. Physical strength is not a guarantee of courage yet. I remember when I was the first year I was a monk, I was living in a very small little branch monastery in northeast Thailand, near the Laotian border. And one monk was sent there, a new monk, who was sent there by his parents, a young man who was about 20 years old. They wanted to reform his character or improve his character by making him a monk, at least for a while, because he'd been in a gang and he was always fighting, one gang against another, fighting over different reasons, over territory. I don't know what the details were, but he had been in a gang, and he came to the monastery, and everyone noticed the first day he had a massive scar right down his forehead, which made him look very scary. And he had that side to him as a person. He could come across as very aggressive, tough. Although he was fine as a monk, he didn't cause anyone any trouble, but you could see that was in his character. And so all the other monks, well, there's only a few of us, but everyone was a little bit wary of him. What might he do? Didn't want to get him annoyed or upset. And then it was the rainy season, and that forest happened to be kind of had some marshy areas in it, so all these toads came into the forest because it's the rainy season, started breeding and multiplying, and we were infested by probably thousands of toads, and they were just turning up everywhere. Sometimes the floor of the forest would just be covered with toads, and they'd come into the buildings because none of the buildings had doors or windows. They're just open-sided. Our meditation hall was just open-sided. So you'd constantly find a toad under something or on top of something or in a corner or in your spittoon or in your bag or somewhere. They were just turning up everywhere. Sometimes you get a pile of toads. So most of us would just laugh because it was a bit ridiculous, the amount of toads everywhere. And we were actually given a job to collect the toads one day with a push cart. We just picking up toads for a whole day and then took them out of the forest to try and exile them. But you could never get rid of them all. Anyway, this very tough monk from a gang with a big scar where someone had plunged a machete into his forehead once was there, and the way a monk stores his bowl, you have a bowl and you keep your bowl lid on top of the bowl at night, but open it a little bit just to let air circulate so your bowl doesn't smell, because your bowl is what you collect food in and eat your food in. So sometimes the food makes your bowl smell even if you've cleaned it. So you leave it to ventilate at night, which meant that a big fat toad had crept into it to sleep and just hang out, I guess. So in the morning, about 5 a.m, before we went on alms round, we finished our morning meditation and we were just preparing our bowls, and this tough young monk opened his bowl lid and there was a toad sitting there. So he flung his bowl down in fear and aversion for toads, and he went running out of the little meditation hall into the forest, and it was dark. He was just bumping into trees and treading on things in his bare feet and just screaming in panic because he didn't like toads. We had two 16-year-old novices, so they both laughed and loved this event. Eventually we got him back into the meditation hall and someone took the toad away. But then, the 16-year-old novices said, "Oh, I thought this guy was tough." And he was tough in certain situations, but not with toads. So there's courage and there's courage. Sometimes we're courageous in one area of our life or with one thing, but sometimes not so much with another. But what the Buddha said is, if you practice mindfulness, then you overcome your fears, your doubts, your worries, and your mind naturally becomes bolder through the practice of mindfulness, 4 foundations of mindfulness. So mindfulness directed to your body, to feelings. So fear is often accompanied by an unpleasant feeling, mental pain, mental agitation, or physical pain as well can stimulate fear. So being more mindful of feelings as impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self, contemplating them, mindful of mental states, and then investigation of the Dhamma to understand how fear arises and how impersonal it is and how you don't have to identify with it and you can let it go. So the practice of mindfulness combined with wisdom and then experience in the practice will bring you courage and help you to overcome fear. Whatever aspect it is, fear about your health, fear about other people, fear of ghosts, fear of the dark, fear of whatever it is, you gradually become more courageous, more brave as you practice. Even the Buddha said, if he was meditating in the forest and fear arose, so this is before he's a Buddha, because a Buddha, if you're enlightened, you no longer have fear. But if you're practicing not yet fully mindful and wise and haven't penetrated the Four Noble Truths, so you're not yet enlightened, fear might arise. So the Buddha said when fear arose, when he was a bodhisattva, he would continue sitting. If he was sitting and fear arose, he would just continue sitting until that fear had subsided. So he could show himself or understand, penetrate the fact that fear is not self. It's impermanent, it arises, but then it passes away and you see it's not self and your mind goes back to emptiness. And you can see very clearly that the fear is like a visitor to the mind, but then it goes away. And so you don't have to identify with it and attach to it. So if he was sitting, he would just sit through his fear till it was gone. Or if he was walking, he would walk through his fear until it was gone. So it's giving you the way to deal with it. You need determination, patience, mindfulness, effort, and then some wisdom as you practice, and you start to see what causes fear and what leads your fear to subside, and see fear what it is. It's a mental sankhara that can be abandoned, and you get courage from that. Courage based on wisdom, not foolish courage that makes you do something, seemingly brave, but maybe it's hurtful to you or someone else. But courage with wisdom, and the courage to overcome or abandon mental defilements, which is what we're aiming for. And sometimes you just have to kind of stare them down. In the world, people tend to see courage and bravery as something you need to overcome another person, whether it's in a sport or some competition of some sort, or in an argument or a fight even. But in Dhamma, you are using courage to overcome mental defilements in your own mind. So you need to be able to stare down your own defilements that arise in your mind, see them as impermanent and let them go. So courage for the Buddhist practitioner is really an inner quality that you're developing for training and mastering your own mind, rather than trying to master some other person. So in short, courage is gained through practice. And the initial faith and inspiration that made you want to practice merges with your wisdom and your understanding through experience, until it's no longer just a belief, a self-belief, or a belief in the Dhamma and the effectiveness of Dhamma practice, but you actually know. Knowing means knowledge, wisdom arises to balance your faith, so it's not just a belief anymore, it's actually based on personal knowledge, or we say knowledge and vision of the way things are. And then fear and the opposite of courage crumbles, and what's left is a certain, you might say, boldness of mind. As samadhi arises, as insight arises, the mind becomes bolder, brighter, and can go face things and go through different obstacles much better. So, finding courage, you just keep practicing, I would say. Determined to practice. Ajahn Chah would say something like, if it's not good, let it die. If it doesn't die, make it good. That sort of determination just to abandon everything that's not good in your mind, in your heart, and just focus on that goal, not even worrying about life and death anymore. It's just, let the kilesas die. So your mind becomes stronger, more courageous in that way. Another question. Luang Por, we know that all conditions arise and pass away, but why do mental defilements arise more often than the wholesome qualities of mind? And why do they seem to stay longer? Because we're good at them. The answer. We're good at the mental defilements, we're not so good at the Dhamma. We know the mental defilements, we're friends with them, we allow them into our mind, we flatter them, we keep them there, we spoil them, we don't do much about them, so they take over our mind and they come up often and sometimes more and more intensely. So mental defilements, all the mental states rooted in greed, anger, delusion, jealousy, rage, stubbornness, laziness, confusion, everything. All the negative stuff that causes us suffering, we're good at that. And the good stuff, we're not so good at, if you can say that. The good stuff, the faith, the effort, the mindfulness, the samadhi, the wisdom and understanding, the insight. This is what we have to cultivate and develop, the wholesome Dhammas. And we've done it sometimes, but not enough. We need to do more. Otherwise, greed, anger, delusion runs riot in our mind. The coarse stuff we often see and understand, oh, this, I've got to abandon this, the desire to do very coarse, unskillful, unwholesome things. We can often see that because it's coarse, because it's a very strong urge, negative emotion comes up, maybe we can see that and we say no. There's a lot of subtle stuff going on as well, subtle negativity and desires that we often miss, or just we're so used to them that we're not doing much about them. So they kind of linger on. So particularly in the beginning of the practice, one thing Ajahn Chah used to emphasize all the time is cultivating the qualities of hiri and ottappa. These are the guardian devas, the guardian angels of the world, but they're in our mind, they're guardian angels of our mind. The hiri, a sense of shame, shying away from evil and wholesome mental states and intentions. Ottappa, understanding that when you follow an unwholesome state of mind, whether it's just thinking or speaking or acting on it, brings you suffering, it has consequences. And you don't want to suffer, you don't want more of that suffering. Once you've seen that, then you have ottappa. So you may have an angry thought arise, but you don't hold on to it, you don't indulge it, you let it go as quickly as possible. Because it will lead you to suffering. The same with greed and jealousy and stubbornness and all the different negative qualities. The more we bring up awareness, mindfulness and reflect on our own mental experience, the more we'll notice these defilements and then want to let them go, because you'll know that they cause suffering and you don't want to suffer. So what causes the suffering you want to take out of your mind, as it were, let it go, finish with it. But we're so used to not looking after our mind, following every mood, every desire, doing what we say, what we want, but actually doing what the mental defilements want rather than what is wise and good for us. We're so used to that it's going to take time to deal with all this stuff in our minds. We have to look and learn and practice patiently and keep going, and gradually you get better at it. And you get more familiar with keeping the good stuff, the mindfulness, the wisdom, and letting go of the bad stuff. And you do it more automatically. Sometimes, you can get to the point where you're practicing and a negative thought arises, but you automatically let it go. Some things are more stuck in your mind, take a lot more contemplation and effort to abandon them. But as you practice more and become more familiar with observing and looking after your mind, then sometimes you just quickly shed quite a negative, unskillful thought rooted in greed or lust or worry or fear or anger, because you know instantly this is suffering and it will lead to suffering if I hold on, so you let it go. Just like if you're standing next to a bonfire and a spark comes onto you, you quickly dampen it out, because you know if you leave it, it'll burn you and hurt you. You don't have to think about it or discuss it, you just quickly put the fire out on you, if it's on your clothing or something. Your mind is the same. The more you investigate and develop some awareness and understanding of what's going on, the more quickly and automatically you'll want to let go. Then the defilements won't stay so long. Certainly the ones you see easily, you'll quickly let go of. And that will give you inspiration, motivation to keep practicing as well. What did Ajahn Chah say? Somebody asked Ajahn Chah, do you still get angry And he said, well, I'm in situations where anger is prompted, or I would be tempted to get angry because somebody is being rude, or something silly, doing something stupid, or something unpleasant happens that would normally or previously trigger anger. He's tempted to get angry. But he said his mind doesn't take hold of the angry emotion. So he still knows what's going on around him. He has eyes and ears to see, but he doesn't let anger form in his mind because it's suffering. What we do is we tend to take up greed, anger and delusion as self, hold on to it, keep it, develop it even. Sometimes we're even going completely away from the Dhamma by developing our more unskillful states of mind. And it's a matter of, it's a complete system of training. Sila, your outward behavior, your body and speech; samadhi, mindfulness and one-pointedness; and then panya, wisdom, insight. It's a complete training to learn how to deal with these defilements and reduce them. Next question. How should we deal with people who have the view that if we are meditating, it will make us passive or inactive, and we will just become attached to samadhi? Well, in a way that's quite a good reflection to bring up in your practice. Are you becoming passive, inactive? Are you attached to samadhi? Are you attached to any aspect of the Dhamma practice? Is a valid question. It's part of what we have to do. So when people express a strong view that may not be completely coming from wisdom and understanding, but nevertheless there may be some truth to it, you can listen to that view and reflect on it. Is it true? Is it not? We don't have to shoo them away or get annoyed. We just listen and accept their view and maybe reflect back on our own behavior, and maybe there's some truth to what they say, maybe not. That's what we have to do. It's a very superficial reflection, isn't it? You see people sitting, sometimes falling asleep when they meditate. Sometimes you're sort of sitting there for long hours that don't seem to be producing anything or doing anything much because you can't see what's going on in their mind. So on the outside it may look like they're very passive, inactive, not doing any good for anyone. But you have to take a step back, look at the whole picture and understand, well, maybe they're developing very good qualities as they're doing this. And of course there are obstacles. So sometimes we do become dull in meditation or attached to samadhi, so we become kind of just enjoying a blissful state but without furthering our mindfulness or our insight. This can come up, of course. But the idea, the Buddha said, is you're always arousing energy, virya, effort, and one of your prime areas that you're directing this energy is to develop more mindfulness. And from mindfulness you can develop more insight and understanding. You become wiser or more balanced, your mind becomes more wholesome, and as it does, you can do more with it. You can be more active in the world in a constructive, useful way, because you're less caught up in negative mental states. You'll understand this, anyone who does a job of work, if their mind is in a balanced, stable, good state, you're paying attention, you're thinking about what you're doing, trying to do it well, you get a better job done. All of those qualities, the paying attention, the wise reflection, the effort, you gain them partly from meditation practice. So meditation practice doesn't have to make you passive, inactive, attached to things. However, in the course of meditation practice, those may come up, those aspects may come up, but you reflect back on them, go through them, let them go beyond them. And of course, sometimes it's correct to be passive in the sense, in some situations, we just have to be very patient when you're suffering, or even sometimes someone else is suffering, but you know that there's not a lot you can do other than be patient with it. But even being patient with something is not being passive or inactive. It's a conscious awareness that maybe there's nothing much you can do in that situation, so you have to be patient. There's always layers of truth going on, and sometimes the superficial appearance of things is not the whole story. And many times I've seen monks in a situation where someone else is getting very upset, angry, upset, negative in one way or another, expressing strong opinions, being argumentative or something, and the monk is consciously practicing kindness, maybe, compassion, patience, mindfulness, restraint, and it seems like they're doing nothing and being passive, but they may actually be working quite hard not to be tempted into anger or to argue or to have a conflict with this person who's kind of maybe provoking them or doing something. So sometimes the Dhamma leads you to appear passive, but actually it can be quite heroic, to not give in, to not be angry when someone is giving you a hard time unjustly. That's hard work. It's not passive at all. It's quite hard work. Or someone is treating you with no respect or insulting you or something. And many times I see monks in those kind of situations. Sometimes it's very fleeting, just briefly, but sometimes it can be sustained. Probably see it in almost every Buddhist monastery. One person, for one reason or other, is very upset and aggressive, confrontational, and then someone else is being very patient, conciliatory, compassionate with them. Once in a while you'll see that, and you could say it's an inspiring thing to see, but you have to understand what's going on. Someone who doesn't understand what's going on might say, why are they being so passive? Why aren't they sticking up for themselves? Well, sometimes the best thing is, not always, but sometimes the best thing is just to be very quiet, patient with the situation, not add to the situation, not make it worse, not fight back, if that seems to be the most appropriate, useful thing to do at that time. That may be the right thing to do, but to an outsider it might look like you're being passive. I think I go very passive every time I meet a tiger snake. Because I've seen people act foolishly with snakes and they don't like snakes, so they go up to the snake with a stick, try and get rid of it, and then the snake gets really angry and wants to bite them and could kill them. So I always tend to be pretty passive around snakes. It's that kind of approach, you just see what the situation requires, and sometimes being passive, inactive, as it were, is the right thing to do. So as far as becoming attached to samadhi, in different aspects of the practice, sometimes attachment, you cling to the happiness of listening to a Dhamma talk or a meditative state of calm, bliss. You might cling to that, but then you reflect on the impermanence of it because it will pass. And you notice, I was clinging there. So of course some clinging will come up, but the idea is you keep investigating. You don't just stick there with this bliss that you've achieved. You observe what happens next, and it invariably will pass or fade. Your physical, mental experience will change, and you reflect back on that. It's changed. Yesterday I was really peaceful, but now it's gone. Or how long will this last? And you may even become very skilled at entering a state of samadhi, so you can return to this state of bliss and peace regularly. But still, you can observe it's impermanent, and what's impermanent is not really you or to be grasped at as a person, a being. It's just when you're calm in samadhi, there's a certain factors of samadhi arise, and you know that, you observe that. But you also observe it's suffering to cling to them. When they fade, you suffer, don't you? And many people do. They become really peaceful and happy from their meditation, and then when it fades, they become very depressed, even angry, sad. That's where you reflect, the suffering of clinging is that it leads you cling to something, when it fades or changes, you suffer. So it's still part of the practice to reflect on the impermanence of even states of samadhi. Whereas wisdom, insight, isn't like that, is it? Insight is you know something, you penetrated something, your mind grows, matures from that. So whatever you gain from insight doesn't fade. If it's true insight, it stays with you. So that's why insight, wisdom, what we call panya is better than samadhi, or ultimately it's what liberates you from suffering. Samadhi alone is not enough, you need panya, but samadhi is a basis for panya, so they work together. And sometimes people become so blissful, they do attach to the bliss and the happiness of their samadhi, they think they're enlightened, until either a teacher or a good friend or a situation arises that pokes them a bit, and they realize, I still have anger, or I still have lust, or I still have fear. But maybe for quite a long time they don't realize that because they're so skilled in samadhi. So there is that possibility, and you have to investigate that in your practice and be ready for the fact that sometimes you're missing certain defilements, you're not aware of them because of the peace you've attained in your practice might be kind of covering them over. It's only when there's a certain situation it kind of reveals a certain attachment to you that you had missed because you were so blissful and happy. So that's why Ajahn Chah taught, everything is not certain, not sure. So even if you think you're enlightened or you've attained deep samadhi and you think this is it, nothing can affect my mind now, I'm enlightened, no more defilements, no more suffering, it's not sure. You keep that 1%, 99% you're sure you're enlightened and this is it. You keep 1% open just in case. So it's like the safety release valve. Ajahn Chah says it's the safety release valve of the arahants. It's not sure. You keep 1% is not sure in your mind, then you can always, there's room for reflection and wisdom to arise in case you've missed something. Last question tonight. Dear Luang Por, is it right to say that an individual who has yet to practice, started practicing, enter the path of practicing, and attaining the fruit of practicing, view emptiness and Dhamma differently? For those who have right view will see that all Dhamma is empty of self. Well, that sounds basically correct. One who has yet to practice will, of course, have a totally different experience of reality to an enlightened person, or even a stream enterer, say, someone who's attained the first level of enlightenment by abandoning the first three fetters. But an unenlightened, ordinary unenlightened person who's never heard the Dhamma, never contemplated the Dhamma, even unenlightened people vary, don't they? Some are very wise and peaceful, some are not. But generally speaking, those who have not even begun practicing or understood much Dhamma at all will have all kinds of delusions affecting them, and it will affect their way they think, their attitudes, their experience of life. Someone who started practicing will be slightly different, won't they? They'll be aware, my mind is still so untrained, full of defilements. I've got such a long way to go in my practice. They may notice and observe that, but they're practicing. So hopefully they have some sense of purpose and hope, and they've got some kind of goal that they're moving towards, even though it may seem like a long way to go. One who's entered the path of practice and attaining the fruit of practice well, of course, they're going to have insight that will really change the way they view things, their attitude, and particularly penetrating the three characteristics of existence, understanding and knowing the impermanent nature of physical and mental phenomena, the unsatisfactory nature, the dukkha of physical and mental phenomena, the not-self of physical and mental phenomena. Insight into that really changes things and brings the mind to a great sense of detachment, detached awareness based on knowledge and vision of things. So of course, somebody who's experienced the fruit, even if they're not enlightened, just at some stage on the path to enlightenment, such as stream entra, already their experience of reality of their body, their mind, is going to be slightly different from an unenlightened person. Certain things have gone, certain things are abandoned, never to return. So the Sotapanna already has strong faith established in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Certain unwholesome mental states or intentions have gone from their mind. They no longer have the intention to kill or steal, for example. Their view has changed, their attitudes changed. They understand the body is an impermanent thing, it won't last forever, and they know that, so they don't suffer about it. Fear of death and stuff. They see impermanence all the time, regularly. They see the impermanent nature of the way cause and effect is going on all the time in our experience in the world. But they still have some mental defilements there. Say the stream entra still has greed arising, lust arising, anger, anguish arising, some sadness arising, but it's treated with right view as a defilement and they let it go. The arahant has no more of that arising, their mind is just pure. So yes, people will have insight into emptiness, not self, but it may be only partial. Sometimes they have it and that will leave some good things behind, so it's not like you have insight into not self and then never again. It will already condition the mind, change the mind a little bit, but it may be very temporary and only in some areas of the way you view things that insight into not self has arisen. But it'll always be accompanied by some peace, what we call piti and sukha, relief of suffering. If you clearly see not self in just one thought, already the mind just feels a little bit more relieved, less suffering, feels good. It's kind of happiness. If you keep doing that, then those insights become stronger, more profound, and apply to your experience in all areas of your life and personal experience, to the point where you're ultimately arahant has penetrated everything as not self, so that just with emptiness all the time, there's no more attachment to body and mind as self, no more identification as self. But it's a gradual change. I mean, it could be quite quick for somebody who practices in a very sincere, dedicated way. In one lifetime they can move from unenlightened to arahant in one lifetime. Within a few years it's possible. But not many people do that. Most people, it's like a gradual moving towards the penetration of the emptiness or the not-self in experience. And there may be periods where they have clarity and that clarity stays, but then they move on and investigating other aspects of their experience which they still haven't seen as empty and not self. And how long it all takes, it depends on their barami. Some people move quickly in their practice, some people take longer. It depends. So, they are the questions tonight. We wish you well with your practice.